Good afternoon, everyone. Live from Silicon Valley, California, this is Spiritual Witness. My name is JM, and I welcome you all to a program today afternoon to Engage or Not with your host, Vaish, a veteran Bhakti yogi, author, and former monk. We have close to 10 members on Zoom and close to 50 members on Facebook. I have Shweka helping me out in managing social media today. Good afternoon, Vaish. Welcome to Spiritual Fitness.
Oh, thanks a lot, JM. Great to see you. I'm really happy to be back with everybody. Thank you for coming on this. Well, if you're in the Bay Area, it's a little bit cool and moist this morning. It's starting to look a little more like winter. And I'm today going to be talking about the different rungs on the yoga ladder and how they all affect the way that each one of the practices has its own way of dealing with the world. Hence the title for today, to engage or not. That is the question. As oftentimes in the question of spirituality, oftentimes we wonder, should I be part of the world, part of society or not? I mean, it's a fact that some people detach themselves, not very many, but some go off into a cave or live in solitude and stay aloof as much as possible, and others mix it up. The world, can we be spiritual in both circumstances, in both situations? What works best? What do the wisdom literatures say about the different paths of yoga? Well, that's something we'll be talking about today. In the last several months, maybe since the beginning of the year, we've also been talking about spiritual fitness. It's the name of the program, but it's also a kind of discipline, a practice, developing some good habits that make us spiritually fit according to the parameters given in some of the ancient wisdom literatures. And just reporting in that this morning, following these basic principles of spiritual fitness as we have on the challenge, I got up at 4 and started the day with saying some mantras before I rolled out of bed. This is one of the practices in spiritual fitness, is start consciously. And the mantra brings the mind back to focus on our higher self. So that's one way that you can start the day that's very powerful. And it never ceases to amaze me that when I do start my day that way, that it really brings me back into focus after being in dreamland for a while. And then having a spiritual regimen as soon as I get up in the morning gives me a sense of very strong centering and purpose. So after getting up, then touching water, getting clean, and starting the mantra early in the morning. Mantra meditation can be done alone. It can be done in a circle with other people. It also can be done to music. The mantra meditation, when we do it for ourselves, is called japa. You can sit, you can pace, you can walk, and you do your mantra. Oftentimes, when you're doing the mantra and sitting, you can close your eyes and be more focused if you like, if it doesn't make you sleepy. And pacing also can kind of help you get into the rhythm and not be sleepy. Also, some people walk and they'll walk along, not looking in store windows and so forth, but walking and chanting, being aware that one's chanting, but also watching out where you're going and being aware that there are multifarious energies around us, and they're all coming from the same original conscious source. There's a way that the mantra brings us in, it synchronizes all the spiritual energy and brings them to the fore. So that's very powerful, that kind of practice. And so the wisdom literatures recommend mantra meditation in the morning, if you can do it before the sunrise. Today, the sun came up at 7:14. I was there to greet it, such that it was a little bit covered today, but it's a big event. And then also in the spiritual fitness practice, the recommendation for the mind to keep the mind in sattva, or being purposeful and aware and in the moment. Plan out your day. It sounds counterproductive, but the fact is that when we get our plans on paper, that here are the main priorities for the day, then we can kind of let them go and then work methodically towards them without wishing all day long that, I should be doing this. Maybe I feel guilty, I'm not doing it, and so forth. And of course, in the spiritual fitness practice, the challenge, there's a few things for the body, like taking a walk, making sure that we're moving around, because I'm hearing a lot nowadays that everybody's sitting more. I'm definitely sitting more in front of a screen. So it's important to get out and move and get the body, blood to the brain and to all the cells in the body and so forth. Walking is a good exercise. It doesn't require a lot of paraphernalia. And you can also do your mantra when you're walking. So that's also a plus for that kind of a practice. I'm curious, some of you are checking in on a daily basis with the spiritual fitness challenge. I wonder if anybody's got any thoughts or experiences from recently, how it's been for you, any of the aspects that you're engaged in. If you think of something, you can just put it up in the chat, or you can break in at any time during this. It'd be nice to hear, because when we're doing some kind of a challenge like that, when we hear from others too, it really helps. So let's start off the session today with a little bit of centering and meditation. So if you'll sit up a little bit straighter, just a half inch straighter than you were when you heard me say we're going to do a little meditation, and close your eyes, and then be aware of your inner environment, and then bring your concentration, your awareness to your breath, and relax and breathe. And it's helpful sometimes to mentally say out when you exhale and in when you inhale. And as you're doing this, you can try a little meditation on the 2 syllables Ra, Ma. This is a very enriching mantra. By sitting for a moment and visualizing these 2 syllables together, they're in one word, Rama. It brings joy to the mind. So just try it as you're breathing. And you can try this experiment that when you breathe in, mentally say the syllable Ra. And when you breathe out, mentally say the syllable Ma. And as your mind inevitably drifts away to something else, bring it back to these 2 syllables. And now let's try a little japa. So behind muted mics, on one exhalation, we'll say the 2 syllables, Rama. So take an exhalation and an inhalation, and we can say in unison, Rama. Rama. Rama, 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 Rama. And now just feel the vibration as it's entered into your mental system. Every sound vibration we take in has a consequence. And just notice how subtle your inner space is. And when the mantra comes in, it stays there. And now just notice if you have any kind of thought energy moving around, any feelings of angst. And if you notice it, see that you're the one who's noticing it. And we're going to chant the Rama mantra 3 more times. And notice how you rise above that frenetic thought energy, anxieties, by riding on the power of the mantra. So take an exhalation and inhale, and we'll say together out loud behind muted mics 3 Ramas. Rama, 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 and just take a moment to breathe and notice the power of the mantra. You rub your hands together, get some external sensation in your body, and open your eyes and come back into the Zoom. And welcome back. So the mantra, man means mind and tra means to help or to deliver. So the mantra itself has some spiritual power that helps lift us above the frenetic energy of the mind. You don't have to be 2 miles above it. You only have to be 1 inch above it to not drown in it. So if you feel yourself drowning in the mind's energy, this is called habu-dubu. That's the sound of drowning, habu-dubu. So if you want to get above the drowning energy of this world, then the mantra can lift you up. And in meditation, oftentimes the mind either goes to sleep or it goes off into various other realms that we're not even aware of. So one of the practices is to bring the mind back constantly. Shanaya Shanaru Paramed, gradually by practice, continuously bringing the mind back to focus on the self. And one of the most recommended ways to do this in the Yoga Sutras, Bhagavad Gita, the ancient Puranas, which teach about yoga meditation, is to use the mantra as a friend that helps to pull you above the mind so you can practice mantra meditation. Great. Thank you. I hope that was some experience to get the day started with your spiritual fitness. And today's topic, we're going into engagement. And let's just take a look at a couple of slides. And feel free to use the chat box if you have comments or questions, because we like to keep the conversation going. It's the reciprocation, hearing from you what you're thinking, any questions you have, it definitely amplifies the topic. So really, what does engagement mean? And in this context, I'm talking about the difference between, well, really figuring out what is my purpose here, because we have to engage. So the definition of the word engagement comes from a word from Latin, which is gage, which literally means to pledge oneself to do something. So the idea is that we're pledging ourselves to do something, knowingly or unknowingly. And in the next slide, we see that the purpose of yoga, since, as the Bhagavad Gita says, the nature of every conscious being to be perpetually engaged. And notice that even when you go to sleep, you're engaged. I was trying to get back to somewhere last night in my dreams. When I woke up, I realized, oh, I'm already here. Nonetheless, I was vigorously moving towards that goal, even while I was sleeping. So the wisdom literatures say that the self, the sentient being that you are, you're always engaged. Consciousness cannot be denied, because denial of consciousness is also an act of consciousness. So if you say, oh, I don't exist, well, who just made that declarative statement? And who's witnessing the vibration of that statement and so forth? And the second aphorism in the Bhagavad Gita is, if we don't choose our engagement, we will be engaged by the force of nature. So I've talked in this session about the ways in which we are forced into engagements, and it's by the impressions within our mind. We have what are called samskars that we've taken on, we've assumed over many lifetimes, and we have a certain nature that drives us. That nature is very forceful, as when it moves us through the process of what's called karma. And when the mind's purified and we realize our self as a sentient being beyond the body, then our engagement may become enlightened engagement. So yoga is the path of choosing enlightened engagement. It means deliberately finding the ways and means to move beyond the momentum and the force that comes naturally through the mind, and purifying the mind and the senses. Now, what is that kind of purification? I'll just talk about that for a second. You come back to the Zoom room for a minute, but it's called upadi. This is a very interesting concept. If you take a crystal and you put a red rose by it, you'll notice that the crystal is also red. I have a question for all of you. Are crystals, well, this may sound like a tautology, but are clear crystals red? What do you think? Naturally, by nature. Shweka says no. Okay, we got one syllable out of the audience today. No. And clear crystals by definition are clear. They're not red, but if you put a red rose, thank you, Anil. If you put a red rose, Rajesh, thank you. If you put a red rose next to a clear crystal, it appears to be red. So my mind, in proximity to the world, the material world, appears to be material. But it's actually, the mind is a material element, but we as sentient beings are not. We're categorically different from the mind. But our mind and senses also take on various qualities because of the association. And then by our proximity, we identify with the mind and we think that I'm like this, and I have to engage in a particular way according to the dictates of my mind. So yoga means to rise beyond the upadis, or the assumptions that we make based on the forces of nature, which are making us move in a particular way. Okay. So walking the path of enlightened engagement. Really, this is what yoga means, because we do have to walk, means we have to be engaged. There's no point in which, according to the wisdom literatures, we cease to exist, nor do we become a non-entity, or nor do our movements cease, because we're perpetually, as sentient beings, desiring in a particular way. So it's not a matter of stopping desire, which is troublesome. Desire is troublesome, that is, but it's a matter of purifying our desires and engaging in an enlightened way. That's the premise. So there are different paths of yoga. And let's try a couple of these on for size. These are very summarized descriptions of different paths of yoga. Ashtanga, which means the eightfold path of yoga. I've done some presentations on this, the yams, the niyams, starting with what to do, what to stop doing, and what to do in your life in order to situate yourself in a way that you can meditate. And then the different processes of meditation to bring the mind to stillness. So Ashtanga yoga here, stilling the mind through rigorous discipline and concentration. In Ashtanga, the word rigorous is, I emphasize, because it takes quite an effort. So how does that sound to you? And can you do it in your present condition? Apply yourself to a rigorous practice of meditation. What to speak of the yams and niyams. Does anybody remember the presentation I gave on the Yoga Sutras and the do's and don'ts? Some of the do's and don'ts: do this, don't do that. There are various proscriptions given by Patanjali Muni in the process of Ashtanga. And one of the big ones was you should be ahimsa, nonviolent. Remember that one? And then there are other ones like cleanliness is another one of the yams and niyams, that you should be extremely clean. And then you should be truthful. Satyam means always tell the truth. Because if you don't tell the truth, then your mind will be disturbed. You'll sit down to meditate and you'll be thinking, oops, I shouldn't have said that. How am I going to make up for it? And so forth. So here we go. The 5 ways of dealing with others. These are aspects of Ashtanga. Ahimsa, nonviolence, freedom from envy for other living beings, even in your mind. Don't be envious. It's a terrible caustic substance, envious. Ahimsa means without envy, without harm. And the benefit of this, you achieve the power to reconcile and spread peace, reconcile difficult situations. Satya, truthfulness. Asteya means don't steal or covet things. If you see somebody else has something and you say, I want that for myself, this is a form of asteya. Brahmacharya means regulation, sexual continence, aparigraha, non-possessiveness. So these are prescriptive. One should be careful about these. And then there are another list that tells about things that you should give up. So these are some of the mentioned processes for Ashtanga. So the question is, how does that sound to you? Employing all these in your life and doing rigorous meditation every day.
It's very difficult.
Why does it sound difficult?
Because controlling the mind and to keep that level of, the requisite which is needed to make the mind calm, it seems impractical. We can try few things here and there, but not all of them which will help us, stay in the mode which is needed to be successful in Ashtanga Yoga.
Okay. How does this sound to everybody else, Ashtanga?
Anil says some of these are doable, but others seems to be challenging.
Okay. All right, let's look at the next rung on the ladder of yoga. And actually, these are all given clear definitions in various wisdom literatures, the process of yoga. Jnana yoga is using austerity to break our attachments to the world around us. And as I've mentioned here before, the sentient being who we are that is categorically different from the body and from this world. The world's made up of material elements. We are consciousness, and consciousness is not a combination of matter. It's superior to matter. It is what makes matter matter. If we weren't there to observe matter, why does matter matter at all? So in jnana, there's this propensity for very rigorous detachment from the world, performing austerities, depriving the senses so that one comes to realize, oh, I'm not my body. There's a statement, aham brahmasmi in Sanskrit, I'm not matter, I'm spirit. And the effect of that is meant to give us detachment from the world to see our nature beyond matter. And so I'm just wondering how that sounds to you. Sleep on the floor, cold showers, eat very unpalatable food, constantly stay absorbed in the path of knowledge, remembering I'm not this body, I'm something beyond this world. What do you all think? Good?
I would like to say a reflection about Ashtanga Yoga.
Yes.
I'm teaching it myself a couple of times a week and been doing personal practice of that from a few years. But there is a hidden secret in the yoga world which says that yogis don't meditate, which is very true, that it's helpful in a lot of ways to have some physical health, but it's very difficult to concentrate your mind for long periods of time. That's why there is a lot of activity while doing the yoga.
What do you mean there's a lot of activity while doing the yoga?
In the sense that we are going through different asanas, one after the other, and then trying to concentrate on one asana for 5 breaths, then moving on. So you are constantly moving and going in different dimensions through the asanas.
Okay. And so in one sentence, what's your main point?
The main point is, Maharaj said, through Ashtanga Yoga, it's very difficult to still the mind. Doing it, the yoga itself consistently is difficult, but even after doing that, it's hard to achieve the ultimate results.
Okay. Thank you very much for the testimonial. That helps.
We do have a few more comments.
Okay.
On the Zoom as well as on Facebook. We have BM Bar saying, have tried Jnana Yoga and the hard part is coming back.
Coming back to relationships, the world, things like that?
I think the word BM Bar, if you would like to clarify.
The body, coming back to the body. That can be troublesome. Actually, my friend Matthew was a paramedic for 20 years, and he told me several times about several instances of people who had left their body, and then, they'd flatlined, and then after they had survived, they come back in their body again. The heart starts up again. Some described how when they were coming back into the body, they were, well, for lack of a better term, grossed out. They were thinking, ew, I don't want that thing. We're very subtle energy. The the sentient self, and the body is a very gross, clunky machine, actually. And sometimes just being separated from it, it is hard to come back into the body. Thank you for sharing that, Byambar.
Yeah, one more. Ashtanga yoga seems more possible than Jnana yoga. Ashtanga helps with breathing and concentration. That's another reflection.
Okay, great. Well, now that we're on a roll, that hearing what sounds more possible, let's go to the next two that are more highly recommended, especially for this age. The next one's called Karma Yoga. So Karma Yoga really means to work with responsibility. Means don't just work for results, but do it as a duty, and consider your work as a spiritual offering and be detached from the result. This is a very characteristic of Karma Yoga. If anybody has ever volunteered to do something, when oftentimes you think of work, it's like, well, how much are you getting paid? You know, an athlete, can you imagine like a professional athlete saying, no, I'll just work for free. I don't want any money. I'm not saying everyone has to not work for money. You have to have money to survive. It's practical. But the point is that in Karma Yoga is to use your work for a higher sense of service. And one of the ways of doing that is to give away some of the result for a higher cause or to volunteer for something. Don't think, what's in it for me? And in that kind of working with a different motive, interestingly, it starts to open us up to not just enlightened engagement, but also an awareness of ourself. And that is, when I'm saying self, I'm talking about who we really are as a spiritual being. Let's see the rest of Karma Yoga. So karma really comes in the Sanskrit root, kr, which means to work. And Karma Yoga means to use your yoga to align you with your original conscious source. And when alignment is there, then there's a natural satisfaction and knowledge of who I am and what my purpose is. So the effect of this detachment from the result is that we experience happiness in service. And we'll notice the difference between that and reward-seeking work that we're doing. Has anybody had experience with this, not necessarily under the banner of Karma Yoga, but just the experience of doing work for service, even anonymously serving, not even saying, because it's possible to do service and then think, well, look at me. I'm the best servitor. Where's my award for being the most philanthropic person in the world? Have you ever done anything? Have you ever done service where you weren't trying to be recognized? You were just doing service for service. As one of my teachers used to say, do service for service. Don't think about the reward. What do you think?
Yes, I've done that.
How
And to
did
me,
it
it's more
feel?
fulfilling.
More fulfilling.
Yes,
That's very interesting.
because doing that means that I'm free of thinking, okay, hey, look, how good is Anna? Or it makes my heart feel warm, and because I'm doing that since I'm like respecting the other people, not looking what is in for me, but what is in for us. And when I've done that, I usually have felt much better than if I have done anything else.
That's amazing, Anna. Thanks for sharing that. I like how you said it made you feel warm inside. And these are oftentimes the descriptions of doing selfless service or service for service, is there's a sense that you grow by giving, by serving. And this is in alignment with the description in the wisdom literatures about our primal nature, is that we like to give. Imagine if you're just a giver and you weren't expecting anything in return, how you would grow. You didn't have to concern yourself with anything but service. So karma yoga is the first step there. It's really dipping your toe into this flow of gratitude, working out of love. So there's different motivations. This is described by one of the great teachers of yoga. There's a ladder or a hierarchy of motivations for work. So the lowest of all is fear. I'm working out of fear because if I don't work, what will happen to me? The next above that is prospect. I'm calculating what do I get in return for my work. The next above it is duty. Have you ever heard of somebody doing work just out of duty? They just said, this is my duty, I'm doing it.
Mm-hmm.
They tend to be noticed. People, it's like, wow, he actually did his duty, didn't want anything in return. And the highest above that is love. If you're working out of love, it's the most fulfilling kind of work. In other words, you have so much trust in the person that you're serving that you really give yourself to that kind of work. And it's not like, I don't want anything in return. And like if somebody's done something for you, given you knowledge or something like that, and you really appreciate the character of the person, and you're doing something because you've developed this sense of love and you work in that way, how absorbing is that? So karma yoga takes us up the ladder of motivation, not working out of fear or even prospect, what do I get out of this? Even above duty. Then there's a development. We start to look in and see what Anna was saying. Oh, I'm serving and I start to feel warm. I feel that I've expanded, I've grown. And you do, you actually grow. Your capacity to give grows and your appreciation for those you are serving grows. And it's a very enriching situation. I see some things coming in, Jay, and let's hear what's happening.
Yeah, Prashad says, doing something for others moves the attention from oneself to others. What comes with oneself is repeated failure patterns, and one gets free of those when she focuses on others.
Ooh, nice one. That's a nice presentation. You know what it reminded me of? I read a book years ago by Andrew Carnegie, and I think the title of the book is How to Stop Worrying and Start Living. And in the book, he mentions that if you're ever in abject anxiety about something in your life, possible? Ever? Possible. It's possible. He said one of the remedies is to do some service for somebody else. It gets you out of the tiny context of your mind, the little world of my mind where, oh no, this is a ruination now. If you serve someone else, and we see this oftentimes in times of disaster, even now, we see people who are giving themselves to try to help others, and they tend to rise above the fear, and they're not doing it just out of duty. They may even move into the category if they're doing it out of love and gratitude for others. So I like what you said there, Farshad, about what comes with oneself is repeated failure patterns. So, you know, the habit patterns within my mind where I want to control and I want to be the center, these cause a lot of anxiety. The idea that I'm the most important person. I mean, oftentimes this happens in our life. We're attached to somebody, not necessarily out of love, but because the reciprocation they're giving us makes me feel like the most important person. And what if they detach themselves from us? And then the pain is that I feel like, oh, I'm not the most important person in their life anymore. That really hurts. And there's this sense in moving about this world that when I'm asserting myself, my ego is asserting itself, saying, I want to be in the center. I have to be the most important person. And when we move into the flow of service, selfless service, there's a inherent satisfaction from doing the service, rather than having to be noticed for it and get some reward. This is the difference between service mind and the mind that I'm getting some reward for my service, either egoic or some monetary satisfaction so that I can get better situated and so forth. So this is a very interesting phenomenon that anyone can look into, because as I said before, you can dip your toe in this and get started by just remembering this principle. And karma yoga means to make a determination to start using your work by increments as service rather than, oh, I have to do this to survive. So when you do that, yes, please.
So here's I really appreciate that you highlighted all the, the fear, the duty, and the love. And my situation here from my own experience is like, for example, I really love dogs, and I help people find the right dog for them. When I hear somebody say, hey, I would love to have a dog, then I say, hey, would you be open for adoption? And I'll recommend them all these different adoption sites and help them decipher the bios for the dog, because it's kind of coded. No one ever says anything bad about a dog, but there are certain quirks about the dog that would not necessarily work for every single family. And so I get tremendous amount of satisfaction just to match it, to offer them the option, say, hey, based on what you tell me, look at this one, that might be a good fit. Whether they pick the dog or not is irrelevant, because some things that I think is cute, they may not think is cute. But comes to work, and how do you kind of train yourself and disassociate with the reward? Because ultimately, why do we go to work? A lot of us go to work because that's how we survive, how we provide for the family. It's very rarely that your work is your passion and is your love. So when it comes to work, that I don't necessarily always do it out of love. It's a lot of times do it out of duty because it's my responsibility, or sometimes it's like, hey, I want to go to the next level. I mean, that's realistic, so how do we incorporate that kind of love into you do have to think about your career and stuff.
You do. That is very true. And there's nothing impractical about karma yoga. It means that obviously you're still working in the world, and you have to survive. There's that aspect of our lives where if you don't have some kind of livelihood, if you live on, say you live out in the country that is outside a city where the standard of living may be a little simpler, you still have to work to some degree. You have to, plant seeds and harvest them and so forth.
Yeah.
So there's no time at which, while we're embodied, while we're in this physical body, that we can just say, I won't work, I won't do anything. However, when we start to transition into spiritual consciousness, we can use our work and by increments test out, let's try using some of my work for a higher cause and volunteering for certain types of things. This is recommended, for instance, in the Bhagavad Gita as one of the steps on the stair to coming to that full-blown love. And it may not be in the beginning full-blown, it won't be, but it is a flow that opens up to us. And one of the ways that often those who have taken to karma yoga begin the process is they give away a little bit of the fruit of what they get. Means that, let's say you earn something, and take some percentage, whatever you can afford, and just try giving it away to the best cause you can find. Because if you do that, first of all, the mind is set in survival mode. And it's like, wait a minute, we worked hard for this. What are you doing? You may not survive if you give this away. I mean, the mind always says that, even if you make millions of dollars a year, it's like, I can't afford to give that. So when you do it, one of the first revelations you'll get is, oh, I survived, actually. I'm okay. Not only did I survive, but I also feel bigger because I gave something, and it opens up a new world. So even the tiniest contribution to karma yoga, and this is one of the statements in Bhagavad Gita. This is a statement. It says, Neha, if I may, the Sanskrit, Neha Bikramanashosti Pratyavayo Navidyate Swalpam Apyasya Dharmasya Trayate Mahato Bhayat. So what this says is, if you start karma yoga with the tiniest little gesture, and that in Sanskrit is su alpam. Alpam means tiny, and su alpam means really tiny. You'll notice it for yourself. And so you start where you can, and then gradually it opens a space for you that's very beautiful, and it will grow from there. So start where you can.
Great. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thanks for a nice question. Okay, let's move on to the next paradigm. And this is another rung on the ladder. This is called bhakti. Bhakti is the rung of the ladder that all the other rungs lead to, turning your mind to super consciousness by love and gratitude, mantra meditation, which we talked about and practiced in the beginning, hearing regularly from wisdom texts, and working always with a service mind, non-reward seeking work. So the effect is this direct path connects us to original conscious source by love and gratitude. So karma yoga gradually leads us to these direct processes that we can bring into our lives. The practice of mantra meditation, for instance, as I described earlier, is a way to be in resonance with a higher stratum that opens us up to more of this sense of service, which is the essence of the processes of karma yoga and bhakti yoga, and it becomes more purified in the process of bhakti. So let's see, is there one more slide?
I have a comment on the
please, Sheila.
Working. What was the slide that it said about without seeking reward or something? It's so hard in working for a corporation to be in that mindset of service. And I just experienced that, just recently with my manager. I'm like, I'm of service. I'm in a support role where I support a group, and they don't see that I'm here to serve them. They see me as being just slowing things down. So it's been a challenge to have that mindset in the corporate world, especially when my boss says, well, we have to give you more. We have to give you more. So you're competitive with your peers. And it's such a hard thing for people to, for me at least, to stay in that mindset of, I'm here to serve my manager, I'm here to serve my team, because that corporate mindset is you got to do more, you got to be more, you got to go after this. And it's a challenge because I think others think that it, like, why does she say that she's of service? It's like, it's a weird thing to hear in this corporate world. So that came up for me when you were talking, and I just wanted to share that. And then also trying to strike a balance of doing what I really love, because I was doing what I really loved. I was working with the LGBT community and raising awareness, especially around parents having children that are gay or trans. And I really have a passion for that. I have a passion for the Native community and how we embrace Two-Spirit people, LGBT people. And I really threw myself into that work, but I kind of got out of balance. I was doing too much, and I kind of left other things that were important aside. So it's such a hard thing to find that balance of doing what we love and having to do things because we need to pay our mortgage. So I just wanted to share that because it's been kind of coming up for me in this whole discussion.
And also adding to what Sheila says is sometimes the reward and recognition programs or the way that they assign the raises, etc., in the corporate world, they think that it is more a competition rather than something, and you need to be perceived as the star, the one that do more. And sometimes even when you're doing something, people is asking, okay, what is in for me? Because it's a competition. You need to compete to get the better, be the best ranked, or base it on your grade level, being seen as successful if you do this, and this. And to me, this is a challenge. But long ago, when I started in the company that am I, in the reward and recognition system were worse, I think. I decided, okay, I don't care. I will do the things that really care, and I won't try to keep myself being the winning one, because I cannot win by myself. This comes against me. I will try to do it for service, to serve the others, and if I don't get in the top, who cares? I will keep doing that, because this will be against me, and try to change a little bit the system. But I agree with Sheila that sometimes it's hard, because it's the way that they rank and rate the people, and perceive you as successful or not.
These are strong points. Thank you for bringing them up. If we do a SWOT analysis of what are the obstacles to bhakti, these are definitely some of them. And the author and really brilliant speaker, Seth Godin, he has a blog, a daily blog, and a big following, because it's sort of he has this kind of sense of enlightened engagement in the world. He's an entrepreneur. And in his talks, he often presents the fact that, in his opinion, we're brainwashed, starting in school. School, who said it had to be so competitive in school to develop the brain and socialization of between kids and young adults, and then growing up in college. He said that there's a kind of way the consumeristic society needs that kind of competition in school to produce people who come into the corporations and make everything go. So he said, well, take a minute, take a pause and look. Well, I think your points, both of you, Sheila and Anna, that it is difficult, are true about living in this world, especially nowadays, because there are a lot of artificial standards that, frankly, to put it frankly, this is my opinion, but I think they're rather cruel. The artificial way in which people have to struggle just to make a living, or don't get us started on healthcare and things like that. These are the result of perhaps a system getting out of balance and forgetting priorities and things like that. So having said that, from whatever position we're in now, there's always a wedge to get ourselves more engaged in spiritual consciousness. And despite the fact that we may be in an environment that is oppressive, in which the people don't value service so much, there's a sense of competition, overbearing competition to try to get ahead. There are always outlets, ways in which you can integrate something into your life, and that will have gradually a systemic effect. I'll give you an example, an analogy. If you've ever made yogurt, has anybody ever made yogurt at home?
Yes.
Yes?
Yes.
Very interesting process. Okay. Subhadra, you said yes? So what do you do? What do you start with?
Milk.
Okay, and then what do you put? Then what do you do?
You put it at a very low temperature. Oh, you also have to have yogurt starter or some kind of bacteria.
Yeah. So let's say you have a big pot of milk, And then you put in a tiny little bit of yogurt in the big pot. And then if you put it in the right environment, which means it can't be freezing cold, and it can't be super hot. It has to be the right temperature. And you just let it sit. Then what happens?
Then the bacteria grow, and the whole thing eventually turns to.
How eventually? Within 5 years?
No, within hours. Depends on how much bacteria you want in it. I make usually, but.
So, a whole big pot of milk can turn into yogurt with a little dab of starter. So same way, spiritual practice, if you add a little bit into any aspect of your life, it will have a systemic effect on the rest of your life gradually. And also we can borrow from the metaphor or the analogy rather, and that is that, okay, if you put it in the right environment, so the milk and the starter have to be kept somewhere that's nurturing to the bacteria, and then it'll grow. So similarly, that's why when we talk about the spiritual fitness, there are certain practices that seem almost mundane, waking up at a certain time, saying an affirmation and things, but these are kind of keeping yourself in an environment wherever you can that's conducive to the spiritual growth. Then, for instance, with karma yoga, I know people that on the side, they do something to offer service. Just, it's not their livelihood. It's something on the side, something they volunteer for, even if it's a little bit. Or they just start giving a little bit of what they earn to a cause that they believe in. And just that little starter is enough to start opening the heart and thinking, oh, let me go in this direction. It grows like the culture of the yogurt grows in the milk. And gradually, one's whole life can become absorbed in that. And that can be a transition. When the opportunities come, we take more advantage of it, because great discoveries come only unto the prepared mind. And if that's what we're attuned to, service mind and so forth, we will gravitate towards that. What say you all about this conversation so far before we end? Because we're coming to the end rather abruptly here, it seems, because the conversation was so interesting as so many of you participated. So would anybody else like to ask a question or weigh in?
I just wanted to address what Sheila had mentioned. I have a similar mindset that I want to be of service and help my team. And I think one thing that we can do is right now with the insight, from the old focal review, that there's an insight and it's more about individual, and there are actually sliders or measurements about being one intel and being inclusive. So maybe to cater to the corporate world is that prepare the indicators of what you have done that's one intel, and what you've done that is keeping your team as inclusive, and the minor changes. But if you advocate and say, hey, by me doing this, that I made so-and-so feel more comfortable. And that's like the small change, but you want to bring it to your management so that they can gradually see the impact that you have. Because otherwise, if they don't see the impact that you have, they're always going to be like, what are you talking about? Or why don't you focus on what we do? And if you like to be helped, you can ask the manager and say, what's the biggest thing that you want our team to help? And they may have a big area, and then you can say, hey, to this topic, I can contribute this. I commit myself to do this. And then you show them the results, and then they'll eventually appreciate your help. That way, you're not competing, because I think Bob Swan at one time said, hey, the competition is not down the hall, it's out on the street. So we're not competing with our teammate. We may be competing with, as far as how much service I do to my team, maybe I'm competing to another similar position in a different org, in a different group, of how much I can be of service or of help to my team. But it's not about, hey, if I get the promotion, you don't get it, so I'm going to push you down or something like that, but more of elevating each other.
And this also makes me think, the other day, sorry, I was reading about how they are anthropologists realize kind of the dawn of civilization. And one of them said there is not the tools or the things, is the way that somebody with a broken leg can survive the injury because some other tends for him or her. Because if you see let's say a cat or a dog or any animal in the wild or without an owner, if they broke their legs, they are condemned to death because they cannot get food, they cannot run, they will be victims of the predators. So they said, when we start seeing from the human beings that somebody with a broken leg that then heal, means that there's the dawn of civilization because there's people caring for others. So I think it's part of what we are here to do.
Wow, that was amazing. Thank you very much for sharing. Well, I could say that any of my interactions with the corporations, I've found that there are quite a few managers and owners who are interested in having more talks about service, enlightened engagement, and so forth. If nothing else, and they're just at the very base, it's better for the human experience, and people who can interact in enlightened ways actually survive more. And I have seen that some CEOs have an enlightened concept that, oh yeah, we should give away some of what we have. I know some have that philosophy from the very base, karma yoga, give away, don't just keep it all, try to give back. Maybe some of it self-serving, but wherever you start, it becomes powerful. And some of them base it in this idea that we should be doing something higher with the results rather than just trying to amass them more and more. Let's end with a little bit of mantra meditation. Those of you who've stuck it out to the 2 minutes past the hour. And in this meditation, we're looking at this morning, an hour ago, we learned the mantra Rama. And the next mantra that I recommend, Nitai Gauranga, you can do the Rama mantra and also this one, Nitai Gauranga. Nitai Gauranga. Just say it a few times to have the resonance. Nitai Gauranga. Nitai Gauranga. Nitai Gauranga. Nitai Gauranga. And the next mantra is called the Maha Mantra. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. And I recommend, if you haven't also tried it, you can sign up for the Spiritual Fitness Challenge. It helps you stay in the practices, daily practices for body, mind, and spirit that keep you aligned spiritually, and you'll feel the results. And last week we ended with this Sanskrit phrase that it means keep the transcendental vibration going, because this is one of the principles of bhakti. The sound vibration that comes into your life will most directly affect your consciousness. So this phrase it goes like this: Hari Bol, Hari Bol. So if everyone can unmute before we leave, just say Hari Bol.
Hari Bol. Hari Bol.
Hari Bol.
Hari Bol.
Hari Bol.
Thank you very much. It was a real pleasure to be with all of you, and I look forward to seeing you next week. Hari Bol.
Hari Bol.
Hari Bol.
Hari Bol.